In today's episode of More Overly Dramatic Articles from Seeking Alpha, we've got another article that went viral on Realty Income. This write-up by Trapping Value is titled Realty Income, 8-Year Return Drought, and it even reached number 1 on Seeking Alpha's trending analysis last Friday afternoon. And you can probably guess this article is critical of this company's recent performance. So judging by how popular this article was, today I figured we'd take a look at it and also address the biggest concern investors have about Realty Income, which is its lackluster performance over the past few years. As usual, with the people who write these articles, I don't hate them and they usually do make a couple good points in their articles. What I do have an issue with is them acting like the sky is falling over the smallest inconveniences, or they're trying to make a huge deal over something that really isn't that big of a deal. When I first saw this article, the title couldn't help but stand out to me. 8-Year Return Drought, and I thought to myself, 8 years is a very random number of years to measure a stock's return. I usually see people look at a stock's 1-year, 5-year, or 10-year total performance, but why 8? Why so specific? I just had a feeling that Realty Income was probably doing particularly well exactly 8 years ago, and that's what the author went off of to try to add whatever evidence he could find to criticize this stock. And sure enough, if we look at Realty Income during that time, we can see that it was doing very well exactly 8 years ago. Running it through a total return calculator, had you bought it back then, you'd only be looking at a total return of 14.35%. That's an average yearly return of 1.69%, which is bad, there's no mistaking that. If we run the return calculator from this time 10 years ago, a more typical amount of time, it paints a much better picture. But obviously that wouldn't have made the author or his main arguments look too good, so he went with a very random 8-year track record. I wouldn't be surprised if he looked at the total return of Realty Income for 6 years, 7 years, 9 years, and so on, and just picked the worst year out of all of them. He never addresses in the article why exactly he went with 8 years in particular, which I think he should have. But look, even though it's lame of the author to do this, his main argument is valid. There's no denying that Realty Income has been an underperforming stock in recent years. Fortunately for you all, I can tell you with exact certainty why that's been the case, and I can give you all almost an exact certainty as to where Realty Income is going to go going into the future, assuming that there's no corporate scandals or a hardcore recession happening soon. Let's pull up this company's share price history going back to 1994. What we can see from this chart is continuous long-term growth for Realty Income as they kept posting ever-increasing financials and performing more property acquisitions while paying monthly growing dividends. This continued for decades, and for decades, people loved Realty Income. Then finally we get to COVID in 2020, where the stock was at its all-time high before plunging along with the rest of the stock market. This wouldn't last long though, as the share price of O started to recover shortly afterward. In August of 2022, Realty Income was still recovering and was closing in on returning to its all-time high. But can you guess what happened in 2022, especially towards the latter half of the year? That's right, interest rates started going up. Out of all the higher-yielding alternative investment types that exist, REITs are one of the most interest rate sensitive because they tend to borrow a lot of money to grow their property portfolios. Plus, higher rates can also put strain on their tenants who are leasing their properties, although we haven't seen this particular REIT suffer from this. But never in this stock's history since going public has it seen interest rates rise so high and so quickly. In the latter half of 2022, investors started selling off Realty Income as they became concerned about the effects of higher interest rates. All of a sudden, after many good decades, a number of analysts now started hating Realty Income. And it should also be mentioned that this sell-off wasn't largely done by buy-and-hold investors. Before 2022, there were a lot of people and financial institutions who bought this stock for its growth because it provided great returns for decades. But because these types of investments do tend to be pretty cyclical, they started selling REITs in droves to instead focus their attention on trying to capture gains in other higher growth sectors. In August of 2023, the federal funds rate peaked and the sell-off of Realty Income continued. But then we finally get some good news. Jerome Powell in early 2024 made it clear that they have no desire to raise interest rates any further, and rates have remained almost flat since then. Now if we look at Realty Income's share price performance since Powell has said that he wants to focus on reducing rates soon, the sell-off has stopped. O is basically flatlined for the past several months as investors want to see what the Federal Reserve is going to do next. So now that brings us to today. We're now still waiting for interest rates to finally get cut, and once that happens, Realty Income will recover. But the big question we all have to ask is, what exactly will happen if rates remain very high for longer than we anticipate? A lot of economists, after all, previously estimated that we would have seen interest rates get cut by this point in 2024. If there is a nightmare scenario where rates remain very high for the remainder of the year and even going into 2025, is that going to put a lot of pressure on Realty Income? That's a difficult question to answer. Powell said he does want to focus on cutting rates, but we don't know how quickly or how much the feds are actually going to cut them. Another thing that most people don't seem to realize is that Realty Income isn't the only REIT that's been struggling. It's been across the board for most REITs. If we look at VNQ, which is the Vanguard Real Estate Index Fund ETF, we can see that this holding hasn't recovered in share price either. It currently holds 159 different REITs across every sector, so it has a good amount of diversity. The distributions this ETF pays has also remained very flat, whereas Realty Income has continued to regularly grow their monthly dividends. So Realty continues to be a really attractive position in my opinion. Even while rates have remained very high over the past couple of years, Realty Income has continued to grow massively as a company. Since 2021, Realty Income has more than doubled in size, growing from 6,600 properties to now over 15,000. This company has already grown its monthly dividend 3 times this year by an even larger amount than usual. So there are a lot of good things happening with this company. But the author of this article makes another major mistake when analyzing this stock. He compares the performance of it to the performance of the S&P 500. Realty Income is not Tesla, it's not Nvidia, and it's not Microsoft. Realty Income is a dividend-paying investment that's geared towards people who like receiving monthly income. Whether you're retired and looking for stable income, or you're just an investor that loves to receive income from your holdings. You're comparing apples to oranges when you try to compare Realty with the overall market. They're not trying to achieve the kind of rapid growth that you would see with tech stocks. But in a way, I can understand why a lot of people make this mistake of comparing this company to the index, because like I said earlier, Realty Income performed extremely well, often beating the market in many years. And that likely explains why the sell-off of Realty Income was way more severe than other REITs. It was trading at a big premium a couple years ago because investors were willing to pay more for the high quality that they got. But especially in this environment, you can't compare these two to each other. REITs just suffer harder when interest rates are high, whereas many other companies in the S&P 500 have been able to excel, especially tech stocks. It doesn't make sense to compare this stock to the broader market. If you want to compare it with other REITs, then that makes more sense, but people buy this stock for its income, not for its rapid growth. But in the end, despite the negative title and the negative contents of it, the author still gives Realty Income a buy rating. I guess after reading what I did, I expected the author to say people should stay away from it or something along those lines. But he appears to have the same conclusion that I have about Realty Income, which is that better days will return for this company. All we can do is hope that interest rates won't remain high for too much longer, which is the biggest threat to this company in my opinion. But with that being said, that's going to conclude today's video. If you'd like to connect and also see what's inside my own personal dividend portfolio, then feel free to check me out over on our Patreon, where you'll receive updates and be able to talk to me and other higher yielding dividend and income investors. But with that being said, thank you all so much for watching today's video, and until next time, take care.